But this is the story that has me fired up tonight. House Minority Leader John Boehner has been out in the sun just probably a little bit too long, hadn't he? The tan man is flustered and backpedaling on his pledge to America. The Republicans' so-called new governing agenda to set a different course for the country is nothing but a garbage sale, and the American people aren't buying it. After 20 months of offering no ideas, he and his cronies did a dog and pony show to lay out their playbook for the American people. Late last week, he sounded pretty confident.
The American people are speaking out like never before. They're concerned about the future of our nation and the future for their children. And they see a government in Washington that isn't listening, doesn't get it, and frankly, the American people think that Washington doesn't really care. We're here today to put forth a new governing agenda built by listening to the American people that offers a new way forward.
You know, that soundbite was from last week, but I just can't get enough of it. Now, I told you his 21-page pledge to America wasn't worth the paper that it was printed on. The tan man proved me right on Fox News Sunday. Chris Wallace asked him about solutions.
Let's not get to the potential solutions. Let's make sure Americans understand how big the problem is. Then we can begin to talk about possible solutions and then work ourselves into those solutions that are doable.
Boehner can't even give a straight answer on Fox News. After months of waiting, he says the pledge was really just to lay out the problems. Here's a good place to start, Mr. Boehner. You are the problem. Boehner has the nerve to say that Americans aren't ready for solutions. It's pretty clear the tan man was thinking more about his handicap and where to catch some rays instead of developing a real agenda for America. Boehner's sidekick, Mike Pence, caved when asked if there is anything new about the plague on America.
What we have in this proposal is not necessarily new. The idea of fiscal responsibility, pro-growth policies, openness and transparency in government are solid American ideas.
Not necessarily new. I just want to make sure I got that written down. Boehner and his crew, they don't want to talk about solutions, even though, as Think Progress found, his own pledge states, we recognize that these solutions are ambitious. The pledge also states that Republicans will fight to promote and advance solutions. John Boehner, you know what he is? He's a cheater. He's cheating the American public every time he opens his mouth and offers nothing but the word no. He cheated people out of unemployment benefits, jobs, health care reform, and a decent chance at the American dream. Just look at the housing market. Have they done anything to help it out? President Obama is now hammering the Republicans over the pledge.
The Republicans who want to take over Congress offered their own ideas the other day. Many were the very same policies that led to the economic crisis in the first place, which isn't surprising since many of their leaders were among the architects of that failed policy.
Boehner and his posse of young guns never want to talk solutions. The only thing they're good at is creating problems for President Obama and the country. And the same day Republicans claimed to have a small business plan, they voted against the small business bill. They have nothing for education, job creation, or anything else that will move this country forward. Boehner is dead wrong. Americans are starving for solutions. And the only way we can get solutions if two parties act statesmanlike and work together. 5 weeks from tomorrow, America has a crystal clear choice. You can stick with the party who voted for health care, financial reform, small business and unemployment benefits, or you can vote for the party of no solutions. They condemn themselves out of their own sound bites, yet they run around the country telling us that we're going to get hit if we don't vote for them, and that they're the only way to save the economy, to make sure that their fraternal brothers of the top 2% get all the tax cuts when it's been proven that crowd isn't going to create any jobs. This is a complete fraud being played on the taxpayers of this country. They ought to be embarrassed what they put out in front of their party last week. And now they're coming back a few days later saying, well, not really. Get your cell phones out. I want to know what you think about all of this tonight, folks. Tonight's text survey question is, do you believe Republican leadership has solutions for anything? Text A for yes, text B for no to 622-639. We'll bring you the results later on in the show. Joining me now is Democratic Congressman Jim McDermott of Washington. Congressman, good to have you with us tonight. I want to focus. I am perplexed that they would come out with this plan, so to speak, and then turn to the American people and say they don't understand how big the problem is and they're not ready for solutions. What's your response to that, sir?
Well, Ed, as I listen to your presentation, it makes me really angry to hear them say this stuff because they have resisted working with us on every single proposal we've made. In health care, we had a plan to reduce the impact on small business. They voted no. This week, we gave $12 billion in tax cuts to small business. They voted no. I mean, the list is as long as my arm. And when they say they have solutions, if we put them in charge, you know, you got to give some evidence of that, or at least talk about some. But they won't even talk about what they're going to do. John Boehner says, well, first we have to convince the American people there's a problem. Hey, John, wake up. They know there's a problem. The question is, what are you going to do about it? And they really run from any solution we put on the table. They won't work with us. It drives us really, I mean, it's infuriating.
Congressman, do your constituents get that? I mean, do you run into any resistance at all from people who are saying, gosh, the Republicans have really got the good ideas? Do you hear that at all out there?
All I heard this weekend when I got home to Seattle was laughter. They said, did you see what those guys said? And then on Sunday, they got up there with a straight face and said it again. It's sort of like what Groucho Marx said, the first thing you do when you go into politics, you got to be able to keep a straight face. Well, they got that down. They can make you believe they have a solution, but there's no evidence anywhere of any solution.
Well, if this tax cut goes through, it would add $4 trillion to the debt of this country. And yet they offered $16 billion to offset that. How could the Democrats not just take that and go to the barn big time and just hammer them on the fact that they're screaming about fiscal responsibility, yet they want to add trillions of dollars to our financial woes? What about that?
Well, that's why we turned down their proposal, because they never want to pay for it. They didn't want to pay for the tax cuts of George Bush in 2001 and 2003. They didn't want to pay for the wars. They didn't want to pay for anything. And they still are talking about that the answer to everything is cut taxes. Well, frankly, we tried that, and we're in the ditch we're in today because we tried that, and there is no sense in going that way again. Yeah. We need to pay for what we do, and we put a program out there, and they said, no, we don't like to pay for us because you're taking it away from one of our friends.
Congressman, great to have you with us tonight. Jim McDermott of Washington, appreciate your time on this Monday evening. Congressman, now let's bring in the small business owner that hosted the Republicans' Dog and Pony Show last week, Craig Fritchie. He is the president of Tart Lumber Company. Mr. Fritchie, nice to have you on the Ed Show tonight. I appreciate your time, and thanks for offering up your business to the Republicans last week to get involved. I think it's great when businesses are active.
Well, Ed, it's nice to meet you, and I'm glad you would have me on to represent small business.
Okay. Do you feel the Republicans, with the Pledge to America, have your interest at heart?
Yes, I do, and I realize it's short on some specifics, but the point is that they realized the last time they had controls, and I waited most of my life for the Republican Party to have control of the House and the Senate and the presidency. They knew they blew it. They didn't control spending. They let things get out of control. It's even worse now. We've got to get it back under control, and I am appreciative that they at least put a stake in the ground, and they're trying to tell you something about what you're going to get when you vote for them. I realize it's short on specifics, but I realize that politicians don't always like to say the tough choices are going to need to be made in order to get spending down.
Do you think President Obama has been genuine in his effort to help small business? And your response to this most recent bill that was signed that's going to give, as you heard the congressman say, so many billions of dollars in tax breaks to small businesses. What do you make of all of it?
I do like that bill, and I'm glad that they're making efforts to help us borrow money. But on the flip side, they're going to raise our taxes, and I am, if we get back to profitability, I'll be in that tax bracket. And that's the unfair thing about the small S corps, where the income has to flow through our personal tax returns, and makes it harder for us to buy the truck or the forklift or put GPSs in our trucks and hire more people. So putting me up to a 39.6 tax bracket when GE or Microsoft will pay 35% just isn't fair.
And what about the fact that you're a member of only 2% of the people in this country that would be in that tax bracket, correct?
Sure, but the point is, I take a 5-figure salary. We put the money we earn back into the business. The whole reason we're getting through this recession is we had saved our money when times were profitable. We had no debt. I've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in 2008 and hundreds of thousands of dollars in 2009, and yet I kept everyone on the payroll. I protected their jobs because we believe in our people, and that's the way small businesses are, at least our small business. And now we are struggling to make sure we can make money again. I would be profitable this year, except when my largest customers filed Chapter 7 in June. So this year, once again, I'll have about $120,000 write-off in December, and we'll probably be in the red. But we are getting better, and eventually I'll be back up to maybe we can make $400,000 or $500,000 profit. But I'm still going to pay 35% to the federal government, 5 3/4 to the Commonwealth of Virginia, personal property tax to Loudoun County. I pay plenty of taxes. 41, 42% will end up going to the government in some way, shape, or form, and the rest of it I put back into the business to create more jobs. And the small businesses in this country are the ones that are closest to the problem. We're willing to take a risk. We're willing to hire 1 or 2 more people. And with the hundreds of thousands of small businesses in this country, if you let us do it, we'll create more jobs.
And the fact is that 98% of the people aren't in your category. You're very fortunate, and congratulations on being successful. But with all those taxes that you mentioned that you paid, Mr. Fritchie, don't you deserve a government in Washington that will at least work together? And it took the president and his agenda 22 months to pass this bill that will directly help you and your business. Don't the Republicans deserve you at least a little bit more than that?
I will agree with you that the biggest problem we have right now is the partisanship in Congress. And if the Republicans do get elected and we have the same problems we have now, they'll be booted out in 2 years as well. We've got to find a way to work together like Tip O'Neill used to do in the old days, like Ronald Reagan did.
So you really can't subscribe to the way the Republicans have been operating in the last 22, 23 months. They've said no to everything. They've said no to me. They've said no to your business getting better.
Well, I will say this. We have $1 trillion, and this is hard to talk about. People cannot fathom these numbers. We have $1 trillion deficit and a $13.4 trillion debt.
Yep.
So the fact is, some of the things we're doing, I don't know how in the world we pay for, and I'm scared for my children and my grandchildren. So I don't think it's so bad to say no if you're not sure how things are going to be paid for. And I know this happens on both sides because the government doesn't run the way a small business does. At the end of the fiscal year, they're racing to spend all their money so their budgets don't get cut. In small business, we're proud of the fact that we can save on costs. For some reason in government, it's let's spend everything that was budgeted, otherwise they're going to cut it next year. We've got to change that attitude in Washington.
Well, the tax cuts, should they be paid for? Because the tax cuts during the Bush years added tremendously trillions of dollars to the debt. It was $2 trillion. So I guess it really it's how you want to solve the problem is what it comes down to.
It's an honest disagreement because I believe that if you can create more jobs and get the economy moving again, you'll have a bigger pie to take the taxes from. The problem is you get the taxes too high, you're going to hurt the economy, and then it's all for naught.
Mr. Fritchie, good to have you with us tonight. You're a good sport. Appreciate your time being on the program.